You're listening to the Busted Wide Open podcast, dropping the elbow on the hottest topics in sports entertainment and the world of professional wrestling. With your hosts, Nick Howell and Sir Ian Dangerous. Coming to you from the Orbital Jigsaw Network Arena in sunny Southern California. Welcome, everyone, to our brand new dedicated series that we are calling the Patron Mailbag. This is episode number 1, and as part of our big overall transition here, we are breaking some things apart and moving some things, playing a little bit of a shell game, moving things around. We used to do the questions as part of the main show. It just got long, and by the time you get to the 2-hour mark, it's just not enough time. Everybody's getting a little long-winded, so we wanted to give our patrons their own dedicated show where we could answer their questions, dedicate some time to them, and have their own separate live stream. So outside of the live show, these will still be going up onto our normal podcast, but just as a separate episode. So just making sure everybody understands everything. Welcome to episode number 1. My name is Nick Howell.
And I am Sir Ian Dangerous, and I'm really excited about this, Nick, because as opposed to having to rush through the questions on our regular show, now we get to sit down and have a real mailbag episode and really gnaw on these questions because we have been getting some great ones, and I have no doubt we'll be getting more and better ones in the future.
Yes.
And it's just going to continue to grow. So
Yes.
looking forward to this very much today, this inaugural, this kickoff, this debut episode of Patron Mailbag. So yes, if you guys would like to get your questions into this show, you got to become a patron and you got to support the show. And we greatly appreciate it if you do. And those of you who already are patrons, thank you guys so very much. It does make this show easier to put on week in and week out. So head on over to patreon.com/BWO and sign up for one of our tiers so that you too can get your listener questions in on this very show, which will be going up live on YouTube, youtube.com/C/BWO. Every Saturday after our flagship live show, which starts at noon Pacific, 3 Eastern, here in the old United States of America. So Thank you guys for joining us today. Nick, I'm ready to do some questions if you are, sir. You're the one with the whole list of questions there. I'm ready to dive into these.
Let's do it. We're going to kick things off with Jacob Uhas. Chris Jericho is known to reinvent himself and his gimmick. What has been Jericho's best gimmick, and what has been his worst?
Worst, I think, is an easy one. That would be like 2007 returning Jericho feuding with Randy Orton and like the sparkly vest. There's just nothing to him there. There wasn't really a whole lot of depth to the character. He was just kind of there. Yeah. I'll put it this way. If there's an era of Chris Jericho that you really can't remember anything impressive about, that's probably the worst one. And I can remember nothing special about that run. As far as his best run, gimmick, I guess best gimmick, I guess, is what he's asking here. And that's a tough one because he's had a lot of really, really good ones. I'm such a huge fan of his work in WCW. It's what got him over for me, the Man of 1,004 Holds, with the little top knot and Ralphus. Yeah. It was a cornucopia of hilarity. That was a fantastic one. And obviously the list Jericho working with Kevin Owens was lights out as well.
That was my favorite, probably.
Y2J when he held both titles, even though they booked him as a really weak champ and constantly getting undercut by Stephanie McMahon. It was a really great time and a great gimmick for him. That being said, I really have to say that his current gimmick, whatever you want to call it, Painmaker, Clockwork Orange, AEW, bit of the bubbly Jericho. He might be doing his best work of all time.
I agree.
And it's mind blowing to me the level at which this guy is working, not only in ring, but in terms of gimmickry. And I mean, he's always been, when he wants to be, a catchphrase and moment machine, like up there with The Rock in terms of being able to just pump out catchphrases. This is a guy that got the word it over. I just want to throw that out there to people. Like that's all right. That's the level he's at. But no, his current gimmick is whatever you think about his stupid face paint when he was in Japan. Rock star asshole Clockwork Orange Jericho right now. It's for me like my nostalgic heart says WCW Jericho, but I think looking at the level he's working at, it's going to be hard to top what he's doing right now.
Okay, so for me, I would say I have the soft spot for basically Y2J.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm an Attitude Era mark, admittedly. But his spats that he used to have and his interruptions where he would interrupt, plus the intro music, the countdown, that whatever that was, just really made me pop as a fan. And then he would come out and just tear down The Rock and tear down the listener. He might be one of the only people that I can think of that could go toe-to-toe with The Rock with funny quips and one-liners and all of those kinds of things.
It was his debut. His debut was interrupting The Rock. And people forget
making
that
fun of Stephanie's giant boobs, you know.
It was hard to ignore them. Yes. They kind of came out of nowhere and were all over the place. But no, he debuted and took down The Rock. But people forget that Rock actually got the better of that exchange on that night. And for a long time, Jericho was actually a pariah backstage because of his involvement with WCW, and he was seen as a guy who'd come from that company. You know, he was a member of the opposition, and so he had to do a lot of work to break in and overcome a lot of dislike backstage, not only from the other boys in the locker room, but from management as well. So he had to overcome a lot coming to WWF. And it was funny because I watched that when he debuted. I watched it live, and remembered thinking, "That's so awesome! Jericho's in WWF." And at the end of that segment, going, "Oh, why would you let The Rock bury him at the end of the bit? Like, you want to keep him strong, don't you?" And no, they made him look like an idiot for a number of years. But it's funny because the history books don't show that, because his accomplishments looked good, but how they delivered them at the time was really undercutting him. So that's why I don't have that same nostalgia for the Y2J Jericho, is because of how they were presenting him at the time.
That's fine, but I mean, as far as what is his best guess? I think all of this is subjective too. By the way, everybody's
going to have their
whole
point. Absolutely,
that's the whole point. I think the stuff that we saw of him in Japan were the beginnings of the Painmaker and how it was a rub against Kazuchika Okada as the Rainmaker. I think how that's evolved into the character he is today, coming out with the spike jacket and the hat, and Kenny. Sorry.
Well, no, he evolved into Okada. Like, it started off with
I understand
Kenny Omega, and then the Painmaker came from his feud with Okada as well.
You're right.
But like you said,
what that's come forward as the Clockwork Orange sort of little bit of paint with the spike jacket and the hat, and his song Judas, Love It or Hate It, is a great entrance song for him. It's what he is presenting today in AEW. I 100% agree with you. We may be witnessing his best work today.
Yeah.
So that's for me the worst one. I agree with you. It's the stuff that nobody remembers in the late 2000s. So thank you, Jacob. That was a great question, and it's good to if you look at Jericho, if you look at Chris Jericho, and you go back to, he's been doing this over 20 years now. And most of the guys that have been doing this over 20 years are either so broken and battered that they can't even hardly walk down the ramp anymore, or they've moved on to have other careers or other promotions, or they're running companies now. Right. If you look at someone that has spanned over 20 years in the business and is still working at the level that Jericho is working today, I don't think there's anybody out there.
The more time that goes on, like if you'd asked me in 2014 if I thought Jericho was one of the greatest of all time, I'd have said, no, he's good, but he's fine. Right. I would definitely not have. What he's done the last 5 years in terms of his career is mind blowing in so many ways, and it definitely has made him. He's shot up the rankings of all timers because of this late era resurgence. Totally. I actually remember WWE at one point had like their episodes of Countdown on WWE Network, and they called This would have been like 2014 or 15, and they called Chris Jericho the greatest Intercontinental Champion of all time in WWE, and I was so offended. I was so deeply offended by that. I thought it was absolute bullshit. I think if I saw that episode for the first time today, I wouldn't be quite. I wouldn't have be quite so pissed off as I was then, and being like, that's not true at all. Now I'm like, oh, I mean,
we didn't mention Naito in the Intercontinental Championship. We didn't, there's all kinds of stuff that
since leaving WWE, yeah, just that stretch. Yeah,
I think that after the Festival of Friendship stuff with the list of Jericho and I thought that was about as good as Jericho was going to get.
Right.
And then we saw what was next with New Japan and now AEW. It just keeps getting better, and I have no explanation for it other than he's a damn genius.
Yep. Yeah.
So, great question, Jacob. Thank you very much for that one. Next up, Patrick. Power rank your top 5. This one's going to be hard. You're asking us a bonus episode kind of caliber question here. Power rank your top 5 WWE pay-per-views of all time, not including NXT, because they give the main roster no chance. So top 5 WWE pay-per-views of all time.
You warned me about this one. I still forgot. I forgot to think about it. So this is going to kind of just be off the top of my head. I think if you gave me an hour to ponder, it'd be probably different. But I'll just list the ones that pop into my head first.
Mine are going to be based on moments. Just full disclosure.
Okay. So you're not going to be doing like what was the best pay-per-views of all time. Yeah. Okay. I'll do the same. I'll just say like what the pay-per-views that I just like love. Yeah. And I can't promise they're going to be in like exact rankings, like
pay-per-views,
fifth, fourth, third, second, and one. I'll just list off a bunch of the ones that pop into my mind as being just pay-per-views I can watch anytime and be like, yes, it's time for that pay-per-view.
Yes.
WrestleMania 17 off the top of my head has got to be in there around the top, for sure. And while we're talking WrestleManias, I'm gonna have to say 31 because that was the one that I was at. And it was a great card as well.
Seth cashing in just made it.
Jesus. One of my favorite moments ever at a live wrestling show was Seth cashing in that show. Absolutely.
One of my favorite moments ever in wrestling was that.
And Seth Rusev coming out in a tank, Daniel Bryan at the top of a ladder, getting 80,000 people
You're doing all of mine.
Sorry. Well, let's go back and forth. Okay, I've got 2 out. Let's hear 2 of yours.
My first 2 are going to be Seth and Rusev.
Well, son of a bit. Oh, you're doing moments. You're not doing whole pay-per-views.
Yeah, I can't remember the entire cards of every pay-per-view ever, short of going and doing like research and stuff, which I haven't done since I put this post up last night. So sorry, Patrick. You're kind of getting. Here's what I'll say. This is one of those, Ian, that we always say we need to put on the list as potential bonus episodes for these guys. So I think this is a good one that we need to do. But let's pick our maybe top 5 WWE pay-per-view moments.
I'm still on pay-per-views. I've got the rest of mine.
Okay. So
okay. I'll tell you what. I'll do my pay-per-views, the ones I have in my head. You give me your moments. How about that?
Sure.
So I have WrestleMania 17 and 31, Rumble 92. I can put Royal Rumble 92 on anytime. Any match. The Rumble match is the best Rumble match of all time. It's got everybody's on that damn show. Rumble 92 might be my greatest pay-per-view of all time just because I can always put it on and be entertained. The matches before the Rumble aren't even that great, but what was it, like a 15-minute Bushwhackers match? Is brutal. But it's still, I love that pay-per-view. I'm going to have to say King of the Ring 98 just because of the Hell in the Cell match and how many times I've watched that, although I'm sure if I had more time, I'd find another pay-per-view from around that time that I just remember liking a lot too. But God, I've watched King of the Ring 98 so much. And finally, and this counts as WWE because it was at the time the ECW was owned by WWE, but One Night Stand 2006. I can watch that front to back anytime. That is such a wild. That was the one where John Cena was a heel against Rob Van Dam in the main event. You had the intergender hardcore match with it was Edge, Lita, and Mick Foley versus Beulah, Terry Funk, and Tommy Dreamer. Kurt Angle and Randy Orton had a match. and Balls Mahoney, Masato Tanaka. Taz murdered Jerry Lawler, and everyone loved it. Yeah, it was a. You had FBI versus Super Crazy and Tajiri. It was a great card. It was as hot of a crowd as you'll ever see. Absolute insanity. And honestly, John Cena's entrance here is the only time you'll ever see John Cena be a heel ever now. And he worked it as a heel. It was goddamn brilliant.
Yeah.
If you have never seen this pay-per-view, for the love of God, go watch it. One of my favorites. So there's 5.
I'm gonna throw Survivor Series 97 out there. Because you had a lot of the 4-on-4 matches, but the big matches were you had Kane and Mankind with Paul Bearer.
Yeah.
You had Legion of Doom and I had to look this up to make sure that I was remembering right because I wasn't sure if it was 97 or not. But you had Ken Shamrock and Ahmed Johnson with the Legion of Doom and then versus Nation of Domination. So it's basically Legion of Doom and Nation of Domination.
I remember that match. Is that the one where Ahmed came out with the 2x4?
I think so, yeah. But all these are 4-on-4. Like you had so the Godwins and New Age Outlaws with the Headbangers and the New Blackjacks on a Survivor Series elimination match. You had Truth Commission, which was, and the Disciples of the Apocalypse. So 4-on-4 Survivor Series match. Team Canada versus Team USA was probably the biggest one of them. British Bulldog, Jim Neidhart, Anvil, and then versus Team USA, which was Goldust, Mark Marrow, Steve Blackman, and Vader with Sable ringside in a 4-on-4 Survivor Series. This is one of those pay-per-views that always stood out to me. And then the other singles matches were probably 2 of the bigger matches, maybe ranking in the all-time. Stone Cold Steve Austin beating Owen Hart with British Bulldog, Furnace, Anvil, and LaFone ringside. And then finally the main event of Shawn Michaels beating Bret Hart by submission.
That was around the time that Owen broke his neck, wasn't it? Broke Stone Cold's neck?
Broke Stone Cold's neck. I believe it was this match. I believe this is why this pay-per-view always stands out in wrestling history.
Horrible moment. I never want to watch that match again.
Yeah. So this is one of those big pay-per-views that I would throw out there as a whole pay-per-view. If you've never seen it, the 4-on-4 matches were great. You had tons of names, tons of legends in a lot of these late 90s pay-per-views. And I couldn't remember whether it was that Survivor Series or if it was one of the No Mercy. I think it was 99 No Mercy was the other one that I was trying to think of. Triple H's Stone Cold, Anything Goes match for the WWF Championship.
I almost put No Way Out 01 because of the Stone Cold and Triple H 3 Stages of Hell match.
3 Stages of Hell match, yeah.
That's always one that I
That was No Way Out?
Yeah. That was No Way Out. Yeah.
Huh.
But
the other one, the other big match on the other reason that I'm calling back to No Mercy 99 was that was where you had what I think was the beginning of the great tag era of what we saw towards the end of the Attitude Era, where you had the New Brood with the Hardy Boys and Gangrel beating Edge and Christian before the cutover, right?
Right before we started getting TLC, yeah.
Right, but right before the Dudleys came in, right before all of that stuff. So yeah. I'll throw No Mercy 99 in there.
All right.
That was probably one of mine. I got to go with the rest of mine are mostly moments that aren't in the Attitude Era are Daniel Bryan's gauntlet that he had to run at Evolution. I believe that was 32.
WrestleMania? That was 30.
Was it 30? You're right.
30.
Seth was 31. Yeah, you're right. That's a big one for me, and the run up to that was one of the better years of wrestling that I can remember. As much as they just kept, if you guys loved the Kofi screw over earlier this year, Daniel Bryan going through that whole thing and Occupy Raw and all of the things that led to Daniel Bryan's comeuppance.
You know another one that might have just missed my list if we're listing ones that just missed our list.
Yeah.
Money in the Bank 2011.
Dolph Ziggler.
CM Punk, John Cena.
Punk
in Chicago.
Cena winning. Yeah.
So it was Punk winning and running off into the crowd.
Are you talking about Cena winning the briefcase? Or
no, sorry. It was not Money in the Bank. It was crap. It was
Ziggler won in 2010.
Money in the Bank.
But
it was Money in the Bank.
It was Money in the Bank.
Because remember, there's then Del Rio ran out at the end and tried to cash in. And then Punk scampered off from the crowd. I was one of the best show. That show was
Yeah,
lights out.
Right. Punk beat Cena. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
If Cena did not retain the title, he would be fired. Okay. Now I'm coming. It's coming around to it.
That's what the last WWE 5-star match, I believe.
That was Daniel Bryan winning the Money in the Bank ladder match. Cody Rhodes, Heath Slater, Justin Gabriel, Kane, Sin Cara, Sheamus, Wade Barrett.
God, what a lineup.
Mark
Good
Henry
Lord.
and Big Show also on that card.
Oh man, that was prime era Mark Henry right there. That was talk about a guy with a late career resurgence. Yeah. Like that Hall of Pain era Mark Henry was.
All right, so I think was that? So I said I don't remember which WrestleMania it was, but it was Rusev coming out in the tank for the U.S. title match.
That's 31.
That was 31 as well.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so 31
trust me, I was there. It was nuts.
31 has a lot of my good moments, and 30 right before that with Daniel Bryan stuff.
Yep.
Those two are right in my top 3, top 5 list. Thank you very much for that question, Patrick. That's one I'd love to go back and
we could do that. We could
cards.
do that alone for an hour.
Yep, exactly.
Easily.
Next up, Lionel. Please let me know how to pronounce that properly. If it's Lionel or Lionel. I'm not sure there. Hi, guys. How you doing? Great show like always. Which are your favorite storylines of all time and why?
Oh, Jesus.
This one's easy for me.
Oh, yeah? I guess it's easy for me, too, like if I really stop. Okay, what is it for you first? Go for it.
So I have two. One is serious, and the other one is because I'm
I'm
a goofy 12-year-old boy, right?
Oh, no.
The first one,
the mud wrestling match, isn't it?
No, it's not the bra and panties match, Russo.
Okay.
Sorry to disappoint you. No, I'm going to say it's the breakup of the Shield and the rise of Seth Rollins.
Really?
It's probably one of my all-time favorites, very, very closely tied to what I was just saying, the Daniel Bryan rise,
Whoa.
My goofy, silly one is the whole, and you're going to laugh. You guys are going to laugh so hard. You might already know what this is because I've said it before. The whole angle of Triple H taking a drunk Stephanie to Vegas to marry her away from Test.
God. What?
All of that from a story
of the decades and decades of wrestling. Those are your two favorite angles, storylines.
You have to keep in mind, I actually like the invasion angle. You didn't. So we're very.
You like
different.
the invasion angle?
Yeah, I loved DX. So we're different.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been the final episode of the Busted Wide Open podcast. We are officially retiring as of this moment.
No, it's our first one. It's our first Patron mailbag.
Right. Sorry, you scared the crap out of me there. How do you like the invasion? Oh God. Oh my God. Anyway. All right. All right.
I'm a sucker for the soap opera, so that I remember.
That was not even good soap. That was terrible. Oh God.
It's in my teenage formative years. You just remember stuff like that, and I distinctly remember, a lot of the things that have happened in the last 5 to 6 years.
It's like me remembering Flight of the Navigator is a good movie.
It's terrible.
I know. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
That's where you're at.
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand your ridiculous side here. All right. So my favorite storylines. There's a bunch I could call out. Punk, Cena, Daniel Bryan. But I've got to go with the one. I actually, and this is close because there's like the superpowers back in the day, or mega power, excuse me, with the Hogan and Macho Man.
The mega powers,
man. Was such a big one, but the one that, because I was kind of out of wrestling a little bit, like I pick it up here and there, but I wasn't really watching religiously through a lot of the 90s. Through about 4 or 5 years in the 90s. I was in school, for God's sake.
Same. Into the 90s.
The storyline that brought me back was, like so many people, was Austin McMahon. But
totally.
Specifically because that was a big overarching storyline for years. Specifically, the one that made me go from casually watching every so often and being like, oh, that happened. Okay, cool. To I need to watch this every damn week. The very specific moment was where McMahon sicked both Kane and Undertaker on Stone Cold. And the Brothers of Destruction angle where Stone Cold had to face down both Undertaker and Kane, and how Undertaker and Kane weren't quite on the same page, and Mr. McMahon was like tenuously had a hold over them, but then also like Stone Cold's like, how the hell do I beat these two monsters? That's got to be my favorite of all time. That was just such an epic. I could say Mankind winning the belt and the whole story arc with Mankind and Mr. McMahon I loved as well. But right around then, just the dynamic of Mr. McMahon and the corporation and the way that everyone else in the company had their different ways of playing off of that authority group, stable, was some of my favorite stuff. Whether it was Mankind sucking up to Mr. McMahon. People forget that the reason Mankind wears the white shirt and the tie, he originally was wearing that brown, supposedly leather getup. He changed into the tie and the shirt because he was trying to impress Mr. McMahon that he could be a member of his corporate team. And now that's just his uniform. That's what he wears all the time.
Yeah.
Right? Now that's what everyone thinks of with Mankind is the shirt and tie. But that all came about because of this angle. So, yeah, that era of the corporation, McMahon, Brothers of Destruction, all of that. So that
led to so many cool moments.
So much stuff.
I guess we could call it a storyline. I guess that's what I was thinking of because it encompasses so much stuff, and initiated a lot of things, coming through the whole part of Attitude Era was just, God, that was such a key pivotal part of it. Anyway, yeah, that's good stuff. And it really, like, the Stone Cold McMahon thing really cemented my fandom of wrestling. Like, up until that point, of course, we got the beer truck and the milk truck and all of these things. Like, everything for me, I became a hardcore fan.
Yeah.
During the McMahon Stone Cold rivalry.
And for some reason, the people in our chat are bringing up Katie Vick and Stone and Triple H jumping in the casket. Like, we're talking about good storylines here, guys. Not ones that nearly ruined the company.
Except for mine, right?
Good Lord. Well, Triple H marrying a drugged Stephanie. Yeah, that doesn't rank up there, bro. And the test wedding.
Not so much.
Good Lord.
But it is still funny if you go back and watch it. The whole wedding ceremony with Test and all that stuff. Rest in peace, buddy. Thank you, Lionel, for that question. That's another one that we could just riff on for an hour with you guys. Next up, Will, do you think Fury will end up in a match with Braun down the road, or was that possibly just a ratings or publicity? So you answered it. You asked that question last night. We now know it's been. Yeah. Well, it's probably going to be a thing.
Braun Strowman is not official yet. Fury is coming out on Monday Night Raw, probably to do some sort of angle with Braun. Probably a lot like Big Show and what's his name, the loudmouth boxer who can't read.
Mayweather.
Yeah, thank you, Mayweather.
Yeah.
At WrestleMania where they had that angle. That's what this feels like. It feels like another publicity stunt, and there will probably be some sort of match at some point. Who knows? Braun is basically the new Big Show at this point, which is really sad. So I think he could be a lot more than that. But then again,
Big Show very easily booked Braun to be what they're trying to do with Cain Velasquez, and I think I've been saying that for over a year now. And it's
except the perception is that Kane's legit, but that's the thing is they don't want to try to make their own people legit. They just want to steal legitimacy from other places. Big Show could have been so much more than he was, but that's a number of factors. So, yeah, I think this will be an angle. We'll probably see some sort of match out of it, and it's quite possible it will be a crown jewel.
Yeah. Oh, well. There you go, Will. I know you probably don't like that answer, but it is what it is. Did we do one? Patrick snuck another one in here. With the possibility of Stone Cold and Edge possibly wrestling again, who would you like to see them feud with? So let's assume, for the hypothetical sake of the question, that Edge is cleared and he is going to have another run, and Stone Cold is cleared and he's going to have another run. Who would you like to see each of them feud with?
Stone Cold. Oh, okay, Edge, AJ Styles.
Yes.
Would be amazing.
Oh, God.
That hurt you there, Nick?
Oh.
And man, Stone Cold, here's the thing. Stone Cold's a tough one. Edge, I could see a few different people with AJ was just the first one that popped in my head as being a great idea. Stone Cold's tough because Stone Cold would have to kick the ass of whoever the hell he's feuding with. And that's a much more limited number of people. They'd have to be the kind of smarmy heel that could get over a couple of times on Stone Cold, but have him whoop their ass in the end, right? That's a very limited list at this point in WWE.
Yeah.
If you did it right, you might be able to pull it off with Lashley. You might be able to pull it off with Nakamura and Sami Zayn.
Maybe Corbin.
For sure, Corbin.
I think Corbin Stone Cold would probably be pretty good.
The thing is that everyone would hate the idea of that. If you said Corbin and Stone Cold's coming back, and his opponent is Baron Corbin, people would be like, "What? No, come on! There's so many other people.
Of all the people.
But that's what Baron Corbin's for.
Yes,
it's literally his role.
What we were talking about earlier on the show with The Rock and all that. That's kind of what he's.
But I also would rather it be somebody else. I'm trying to think of who else it could be, and that's the only people I'm coming up with right now.
But can you have Stone Cold lose a match? So here's the thing for me. If Stone Cold came back, I would love for it to be in some other capacity where he came in, ran in for a save, and just whipped because what were some of the biggest Stone Cold moments you loved? It's when he was the one guy that ran into a broken down melee in the ring and just stunnered everybody, leveled the ring, clapped 2 beers together and drank and walked out.
Right.
That's Stone Cold in a nutshell. It wasn't the one-on-one matches and feuds that he had that you remember Stone Cold for. So I would love to see Stone Cold come back, dare I say general manager? Some kind of capacity where he's in charge and he runs shit. And you don't mess around in Stone Cold's house, or he will come out and stunner your
ass, yeah.
And then pour beer all over you and give you the double fingers, right? That would be wildly entertaining to me.
Special enforcer, general manager, Stone Cold.
Yes.
Okay.
That's what I would like to see Stone Cold as.
Right.
I don't know that
he's his own security force.
Well, because of what you said, you're exactly right. I don't know that you can have Stone Cold come out and eat a pin.
He's one of the few legends that I don't believe needs to put anybody over. And the reason for that is no one is on his level. And that's WWE's fault. Not anybody else's fault. It's WWE's fault. No one is on Stone Cold's level, and I don't think anyone should be taking that rub off of Stone Cold. Same with The Rock, right? There's some people you can get it over. Mankind, Kurt Angle, those guys, they were huge back in the day. Triple H, right? Triple H is putting people over now. Stone Cold and The Rock, they're the two. I'm like, no, you shouldn't. They shouldn't be putting anybody over.
I got it. I just thought of it. Shane McMahon.
Oh, come on.
Hear me out.
All right.
Do we need to make this part of the fantasy booking?
Ladies and gentlemen, if you're new to the show, Nick has a propensity to put on his tinfoil hat and go off wildly into Howl booking land. So let's all take a nice little journey down this shit-covered garden path into the wonderful world of Nick Howell's booking. Go ahead, sir. Take it away.
Loosely based around, I whipped your daddy's ass, and now I can whip yours too. If it had been in the middle of this best in the world run that Shane has had for the better part of 2019, it could have worked. Had him come in and be the one that took Shane McMahon down instead of Kevin Owens. They kind of anointed Kevin Owens to do that, but you could have had Stone Cold come out and do it too. Maybe as part of the ladder match that we just had on the debut of SmackDown on Fox, Friday Night SmackDown, I should say. He was supposed to be there, and there was a lot of people that were disappointed that he didn't show up. He was advertised to be there alongside The Rock, but how do you open with The Rock?
And Undertaker was advertised to be there too. Ooh, yeah.
But did they worry that they were going to wash away the opening with The Rock if they later brought out Taker and Stone Cold? I would love to have heard what the logic was to not have those guys come out.
They had Stone Cold cut like a pre-taped promo before the whole show talking about everything, and that was pretty much the Stone Cold. That was Stone Cold.
That was
the
bad.
Show.
It was horribly
my one critique
edited.
of Stone Cold versus Shane is that a lot of people would say, "Oh, you're trying to capitalize on Stone Cold McMahon again. You're trying to repeat history." So that's why I think that wouldn't work. Is too many people would be like, "Oh, they're just repeating history again."
All right.
So that's my criticism of that. In the chat they suggested Ciampa, which is intriguing. I like
the broken neck off.
Esmeralda says bald bastard versus bald bastard. I'm down.
They said it would just be some bitch and not son of a bitch.
Yeah.
That some bitch.
Bald bastard some bitch versus bald bastard son of a bitch.
Patrick, thank you very much for that, for your second question. And guys, there's no limit on, we're doing the dedicated show now. If you have more than one question, feel free to throw them in. Just wanted to lay that in. Lay that out there.
Let's go.
Esme Stand-In Bear. Hey, guys. I was in attendance on SmackDown this Friday.
And she's in attendance right now. Hey, all right.
In the chat live. All right. I must say after the we get a little dark here. Hang on.
Oh, good. Oh, I like that.
I was in attendance on SmackDown this Friday, and I must say, after the show was over, there was a distinct air of disappointment.
Yeah,
like
kidding.
People expect. I can't imagine why.
Yeah.
Like people expected more. What are some fantasy feuds that can keep people, or can get people, or keep people interested? Or what does SmackDown need to seriously change to not feel like such a gorgeous, delicious-looking meal that just leaves you constantly unsatisfied? Great question.
Well put. Well said.
Crack my knuckles here.
Well said.
Well,
first of all, I think we just touched on why there was a disappointment. First of all, you had that absolute just gut-wrenching finish to Kofi Kingston's WWE title reign. And then, kind of like a not even a tease of Velasquez Lesnar. It was just kind of there for a couple seconds and then gone. And then no dark matches, no 205 live this week. The lights just came up, and that was it. As we said, they advertised Stone Cold and Undertaker to be there. They weren't there. Very dangerous to advertise things that don't happen, and then put on a show that leaves the crowd upset when this is supposed to be.
And then Lesnar us at the end of the show.
And then Lesnarize us, which I think is the thing. I think we absolutely, after how many years now, being Lesnarized at the end of a pay-per-view is absolutely a thing. So, as far as that goes, really, I think, dumb way to end that show for WWE, and they got what they deserve with the AEW chants and the boos, and the air of disappointment, as Esmeralda says here. As far as what does she say? Fantasy feuds. I mean, it's kind of wide open right now because we are getting the draft next week. But here's my problem with quote unquote fantasy feuds. It's not just. And I'm going to use this again. It's not who, it's how. There are very few matchups we could see in WWE right now, which is crazy to think because of the size of the roster. But there's very, very few people you can line up together that's going to feel fresh and new. It's how you line them up. It's how you have them face each other.
Kofi is a great example of that earlier this year on his run up to Mania to ultimately become the champion.
Yeah.
How they handled that and responded to the crowd reaction
made
to
us
Kofi
care.
Invested us. It's
Absolutely.
why we've given a shit about Kofi Kingston at all outside of throwing pancakes and dancing all year.
Yeah.
So my take on that is, like we said on the show, had they given Kofi a chance give Kofi a chance. Had they given Kofi a chance to run up and hit all of his moves, try his best to beat up Brock Lesnar, and just show that Brock is just this insurmountable monster, fine. Give me 3 to 5 minutes of just that. No, we got a 3-second F5 done. That was, like you said, how. But if we're talking about what are some fantasy feuds that can keep people getting engaged, I agree with you. It's not about, I mean, you can't just keep bringing legends back and playing to the lapsed fans. You've got to, like they were doing a little bit of both last night. So I don't know if there are any fantasy feuds. It's more about how.
Yeah, it really is about how, because you could have Ricochet and Nakamura. That's right off the bat. That's an interesting one, right? For lots of reasons, historically speaking, and then also just as far as, how they would interact. But if it's just Ricochet and Nakamura, then it's going to feel like Ali and Nakamura, which we're having right now, and doesn't really feel that special. It's fine. Yeah. It's cool, but whatever. But if you build it as Ricochet is this high-flying machine, and Nakamura is just a striker. All he's got to do is catch Ricochet with one. You know what I mean? Like, and have it be built as a conflict of styles. Nakamura is a little bit put off by the high flying. Ricochet, has got a weak chin, doesn't want to get hit by one of Nakamura's big strikes, plus the Sami Zayn factor. You could actually build that into something interesting. Or it could just be flat like Ali and Nakamura is right now. There's a few that are like that, where if you put people together, you could have an interesting feud with them.
Yeah.
You could have had an interesting feud with Braun Strowman and Bobby Lashley earlier this year, but instead we got arm wrestling and rope tug of war. That could have been a really interesting feud. It's just how they present it to me. Aleister Black comes back and faces AJ Styles. Could be awesome. Could be terrible. So it's not even about fantasizing what people on their roster face each other. It's fantasizing about them doing it right. I always want them to do someone the way that Bray Wyatt's doing himself right now. For the 3 years we've been doing this show, Nick, most of it has been me spent lamenting at how awful Bray Wyatt has been treated and how awful his gimmick had become. And to have him go away and come back and be firing on this many cylinders, that's fantasy booking to me. That is like a fantasy, like, oh my God, they're actually nailing a storyline. They're nailing a character.
Big time.
For me, like when I don't fantasy book, like, wouldn't it be great if so-and-so faced so-and-so at this point with WWE? I used to. And then we had John Cena versus Nakamura, Randy Orton versus Nakamura. All of these dream matches I thought I wanted. AJ Styles versus Nakamura in WWE. AJ Styles versus John Cena, which was actually a really good feud.
Finn Balor, Nakamura.
Finn Balor, Nakamura. All this Nakamura with everybody. I'm like, what happened? But not just those. There's a lot of like these dream matches that have happened over the last few years, and they just fell flat because of the storyline. So at this point, it's more, can WWE pay off a storyline? That's them, the Daniel Bryan rise, WrestleMania 30, like that whole thing. That's a fantasy booking for me when they pay off a storyline right. Kofi Kingston at WrestleMania, that was the fantasy, right? That was a fantasy booking. Them
Becky
paying off
two
the
belts.
Even that they kind of screwed up.
They almost effed that up completely.
They did F it up.
I'm talking about her coming getting into the Rumble, and doing all of that. I think the stuff that she was doing with Ronda,
it worked great to the Rumble. It worked great till the end of the Rumble, and that was it. Even Seth around that time was great. Anyway, so for me, it's not who, it's the stories that go along with it. Like if you can
swap in anybody doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And we've said this before on the show. It's how you book them. You could book it. What was the line you said? It was, you could book, given 6 months of storyline, anybody could be booked the champion.
Not anybody, but yeah. But yes, pretty much. Not a champion, but you can book anyone over 6 months and get them over.
Kofi Kingston did it off of one match.
That's because it's Kofi Kingston. He's special.
That Elimination Chamber match with Daniel Bryan.
For God's sake, Ellsworth got over in no time because of how they booked him. So
great question, Esme. There's so much stuff to think about there other than who it is. It's almost irrelevant who, in a way. Good thing to think about. Thank you very much, Esme. Next up, Andy Jessup. What's up, champ? What's more important? Ooh, philosophy. I like philosophy. Putting together a great TV show or putting together a great wrestling show. Which is better? No. It's not which is better. That's subjective. What's more
important? I'd say that's subjective too, because it really comes down to what you're going for. Are you going for artistic credibility, or are you going for ratings? If you're going for both, I would say a good show, to be honest with you, because you can have an hour show with one wrestling match and have people engaged and wanting to watch your show if you put on a good show.
Here's my answer. I watch weekly shows for good TV. I watch pay-per-views for good wrestling. And if you smatter in some wrestling into my TV show every week, fine, great. I'll lap it up.
So that's the WWE standard of how things like that's they do TVs and pay-per-views in that way. Yeah.
And that's in the absence of good TV, I find that I don't enjoy the wrestling shows as much because I am such an indoctrinated WWE fan.
Mm-hmm.
So over the years, and I think this is one of the things that New Japan, that some of the lucha stuff, so they can put on amazing wrestling shows, but if there's no investment or stakes or understanding of storyline or anything like that, that's, dare I say, pounded or beaten you over the head with or shoved down your throat, at least you're there, you're invested in some kind of storyline, not just a pinfall or submission.
Right.
And I think that's the core differentiator there.
And something else that's just kind of inherent in the question here, where he says, what's better, putting on a great TV show or a great wrestling show? That also draws the line between TV show and live, because I would rather have a live show with some great wrestling than a bunch of people talking. If I'm at a live event, I don't want to hear people in the ring talking. I want to see some action. Yeah. But if I'm on TV, those talking segments can sometimes be more entertaining than a 20-minute match full of a bunch of rest holds. True. So, that's a bit of it too. Because, for instance, I just went and saw the Super Juniors show for New Japan down in Long Beach, and there was, I'd say, a fair amount of story going into it. And they established more story as the show went on. And I think by the end of the show, they had a pretty good storyline going, but it was just all wrestling. There was very little jaw jacking aside from that.
Yeah. Will James in the chat just
2 or 3 promos cut.
Will James in the chat just kind of made my point for me. If good wrestling were more important, Stone Cold and The Rock wouldn't be the idols they are today.
Interesting point there. Stone Cold is actually a fantastic wrestler, but was forced to work a brawling style because of that neck injury and the knee surgeries and everything else. He had to change his style. But so it wasn't that he couldn't wrestle, whereas Rock is an average wrestler, average to good wrestler.
Yeah. He's an amazing athlete.
But Will's absolutely right. They didn't get over on their wrestling. That was a foundation, but that's also, again, how WWE does its TV. You look at people who are massively over in, say, like Japan, and New Japan is a big damn company, and they get over on pretty much pure wrestling. But there's character there, but their shows are almost pure wrestling.
There's story, but it's just
there's
handled
story,
in
but
different
it's
ways,
very
online
wrestling
or in press
centric.
conferences and things like that.
Yeah. But again, I think that the term important depends on what you're going for. Are you going for the artistic accomplishment, where you're trying to put on the best professional wrestling show there is, or are you going for sports entertainment? Because if you're going for sports entertainment, then absolutely, like, putting on a good TV show is more important.
Are you here to watch a soap opera, or are you wanting to see the circus? Because the circus will give you all kinds of feats of strength and great spectacle and things like that. I'm kind of there for the soap opera, if I'm being honest. I definitely want to see the circus once a month or once a quarter, right? But I don't want to see that every week.
Well, let's.
I want to eat watch the soap opera, and eat chips and drink beer and enjoy the TV show that's being.
Well, then let's talk about what you and I both agree is the best wrestling show on the planet right now, and that's NXT.
Yeah.
And AEW beat them this week on every metric. I think AEW had some better actually technical matches, NXT had a better technical matches, but AEW had a better show. Right? So let's look at that. What was more important this week? Putting on a better show. And NXT, I think, has the best balance of storylines and drama and soap opera and excellent wrestling that's out there right now, consistently on a week-to-week basis.
Yeah.
AEW came out this week and had a show with some very solid wrestling, but the show was better. And whether their giant ratings have to do with the novelty of it and the fact that it's their first week, or if 6 weeks down the road, 6 weeks down the road, if AEW puts on that same quality of show and NXT puts on the same quality of show, how will the ratings look? Yeah, will the novelty have worn off? Will they have leveled off? Because that'll be the tail of the tail of the tape right there.
That's what I want to see. Let's get to Christmas. Let's get to 3 months from now and see what January 1 looks like. I think that'll be very telling. I attribute almost all of that ratings spike for AEW to I'm loath to believe that there's that much interest in professional wrestling on a Wednesday evening. I have to believe that a lot of that is hype and social media and the way that they're working stuff for both NXT and AEW in the cumulative to have that much household ratings on a Wednesday night.
I think there's a surprising number of people out there that want to watch wrestling that aren't watching WWE. And the fact that there were still 800,000 people that watched NXT, that's still a freaking huge number. Like we're saying, oh, AEW crushed them, and they did. They put down stunning numbers for the first week. If we can retain 2.2 million people watching wrestling on a Wednesday night, and they vacillate between the two shows, that's amazing. I think those people are out there. I really do.
I agree.
I think that those numbers are out there, people that are interested in it. It's a question of where they go.
There's not a lot of soap opera. There's not a lot of TV show soap opera between those two shows, though, like you would typically get on Raw or SmackDown.
Well, not relative to Raw or SmackDown. That's right. Kind of my point, though, is I feel like they're doing too much on Raw and SmackDown, and it's not being done well enough, and it's driving people away.
I agree with that.
So,
but it's more traditionally what they're known for. It's the reason they've had the ratings and the most longest running episodic TV shows in history, and it's the reason that they just got $1 billion a piece for each of their shows. Yeah. So I again, it's what's more important. Again, it's subjective. It's not which is better. It's not a competition between each of the different brands. It's really about what puts butts in seats at events and what puts eyeballs on a channel for ad buys and things like that. And I think it's a guilty combination of both.
Right.
It's not one or the other.
Well, but I think that if you had to put your thumb on one and weight it, I think that you've got to get that a good TV show. And the people's appreciation of good wrestling comes later.
Before social media and before YouTube and before all of that stuff, the thing that made us lose our minds was Jim Ross just going, Stone Cold's driving something, a forklift through a truck, stings in the rafters. We'll see you next week, folks. And they just cut to black, and you have to, oh my God, what just happened? I can't wait for next week. What just happened? That stuff. Cliffhanger me, leave me hanging, big drops at the end, the stuff that NXT does really well with surprise returns and things.
How about this?
That's good
Nick?
TV.
How about this? The wrestling is the meat in the sandwich. Or if you're a vegetarian, it's the bean burger. Or the mushroom. It's the shiitake mushroom. The show is everything else, right? It's the lettuce and the pickles and the mustard and the mayonnaise and the bread and, or pita or whatever. If you're gluten free, it's the extra lettuce. And if otherwise, it's just a piece of deli meat on your hand.
Are you doing my burger analogy now from a couple weeks ago, from earlier this week?
No, I'm doing a sandwich analogy. It's very different.
Oh, I'm sorry. Very different. Yes.
Very different.
Continue. Go ahead. Sorry.
That was it.
Oh, okay.
That was it.
All
yeah. Right. It's if it's just a wrestling match, you have no idea who the two people are. It could be the most delicious piece of deli meat you've ever had, but it's going to be it's not going to be as good as if you have all the trimmings and everything else, right? All that fancy crap is what makes it.
We don't need to say any more. Esmeralda just said it in the chat. Make me care, make me stand up, and make me yell at my TV. Boom. Bam. Done. I don't care if that's wrestling or if that's soap opera or a combination of both. Make me give a shit.
I'm saying it's
make me yell at my
saying
TV.
It's a combination of both. You can't just have one or the other. You can't have one or the other.
Thank you very much, Andy. Great question there.
Thanks,
really makes you think about how you consume your wrestling. Last but certainly not least, Billy. Everyone here has a pretty similar story about a dad, uncle, friend, or someone who showed them wrestling for the first time.
Not me. I showed myself wrestling.
What's the storyline that got you guys into wrestling? The story or the angle that made you a fan and made you say, "Yep, this wrestling thing is for me." Billy, did you listen to our question earlier? We answered that one.
No, we didn't.
We said
favorite. We said favorite storylines, not the ones that got us in.
No, you
this
actually.
Is different.
I understand, but off the side of that, you said the one thing that cemented you as a hardcore fan was the Stone Cold McMahon stuff.
But this is a different answer. I have a different answer. The one that got me into wrestling is not the same one as the one that made me a hardcore fan.
So I said,
what's
90s. The storyline that got you into wrestling?
Yes. Oh, he's talking about when we were kids. I'm talking about when I was in college. I went. I watched. Okay, my timeline, Nick, is I watched wrestling as a kid, Saturday mornings, all of that, right? And I was the only person I knew who watched it. Literally the only person. Not my family, not my friends. Only I watched this stuff. And as a result, at a certain point, I had no one to talk to about it. I loved it. I kind of phased out of it as I went into high school and I got into other extracurricular stuff and I didn't have time to watch the wrestling.
Yeah.
As the 90s went on, though, it became more of a cultural phenomenon. I got back into it largely because of the Stone Cold storyline. and I went back and caught up on everything I missed because I got into a group of people that all were tape trading. So we started got back into all the stuff that I missed. But there was stuff in the 80s that got me into wrestling that hooked me in the first place. And I've talked about some of them on the show before. And it's funny, actually, now that I think of it, I'm not sure which one was the first one. I'd have to go back and actually look when things happened, because when you're a kid and like you just remember that things happen, not necessarily the sequence of events. So I can't remember which one was the first one chronologically off the top of my head. I'll have to go back and just double check which one was the very first. But I remember like a couple of the storylines that hooked me in, that like got me really engaged to start. What was yours? Like, I think I know what yours was. You mentioned it a few times because you're the one that has the uncle with the satellite dish who beamed him in. You were watching.
It was my grandfather in the 80s.
Yeah.
I was a little kid, 8 or 10 years old, and he would sit there and chain smoke Camel non-filters with me sitting on his lap, and he had the giant satellite dish in the backyard that you'd press a channel like G6 or whatever it was instead of like the big numbers we have today, and you'd just see that thing turning and spinning around out in the backyard. And it would tune in like some like Smoky Mountain Wrestling or whatever was being broadcast, on the local airwaves, right? It would find that somehow. But and from there, that's how I became familiar with Iron Sheik, with Hogan, with Bob Backlund, just the people that were the names of the 80s. And it wasn't until at that point, me too, I got into sports and I got into school and I did all that stuff, and girls, honestly. I just didn't care about that stuff until I came back from college, and I was rooming with a guy. And one random night I came home from school, and he had Monday Night Raw on. I was like, oh, yeah, I remember wrestling. That's cool. And it kind of all started from there. It was probably about 96 time frame. And from there, that led into what would become beer-infused watch parties over the course of the next 3 to 4 years, where 30 people at times would be in our living room watching Monday Night Raw. I'm not kidding. And you talk about a fun environment where I would play it just volume all the way up on the receiver, blasting over the speakers. Cops would come.
Oh my God.
I'm serious. There's some pictures out there of it. I'm scared to show them. I might try to dig them up. Your beer funnels and bongs and all kinds of shit.
Good Lord.
Yeah, dude, we watched wrestling in the late 90s. We absolutely loved Monday Night Raw, and it was a big deal for us. So that was where I kind of invested. And over time, I've gone back and pieced a lot of things back together through watching all the WrestleManias and other pay-per-views. The rise of Flair. Flair was it was interesting growing up in Charlotte too, because Flair was a celebrity like Kim Kardashian's a celebrity now. Flair, you knew, whether you were into wrestling or not, you knew who Flair was. He was seen all over Charlotte. He was in the malls shopping. He was everywhere. He was ubiquitous. He transcended wrestling, even back then. And so we all knew him as much as we knew who Michael Jordan was in the early 90s. So of some personalities, but even though you don't watch wrestling. So that's kind of my story is what was the one thing that got me into it? Well, it was kind of like the boys and girls getting together on Sunday to watch a football game, or Saturday if you're into college. We watched wrestling. We watched Monday Night Raw. And then I went and worked because I worked third shift at the time. That was also kind of weird. I would get so amped up, and we were stupid 19, 20-year-olds back then, doing stupid shit like going to work drunk, because that's what you did. Anyway, fun timeline, fun dance down memory lane there for you guys. That's what got me into it, was the interaction, the friendships, the circles and the parties and all of that. And of course, Monday Night Raw grew into pay-per-views, and then SmackDown started in 99. Was it 99 or 2000? 99, I think.
Somewhere around there.
So 99. Then that was yet another night where we did all. And
20-year anniversary this year, Nick. That helps.
99. Thank you.
But
those are blurry years for what it's worth. I will leave you with that.
Oh, it's the best. Yeah, it's funny because I definitely have some blurry years around those times too. But I also the first couple of years I watched wrestling were pretty blurry too because it was so freaking long ago, and I was a kid. I remember like my first impressions of wrestling were like Rowdy Piper wearing the kilt and uh, stuff like that. But the moment like I remember really getting into it, it was Roddy Piper and Mr. T. I remember being a thing, but I don't remember
Yeah.
it clearly. But it was around the time that because I remember one of the people that I was always captivated by as a kid was Jake the Snake, and we're talking like late '80s, like '89, '90, around that time. I started really getting into Jake the Snake, and in particular, like I would always watch his matches, and what was funny about Jake at the time was that he kept being booked as a heel, but the fans kept trying to turn him face. And it doesn't matter who he was put against, the fans would cheer for him instead of the other person. Like in 2015, I remember him doing an interview where he was like kind of sarcastically thanking the fans for cheering him during a sort of abortive feud with Hulk Hogan because he gave Hogan a DDT and the fans started chanting DDT. And McMahon was like, no, 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 no. You can't feud with him because they like you too much. And so like that would have been huge money for him. And he was like, why did you guys have to like me so much? I could have made so much money with that.
Right.
And they took that away from me because you guys like me too much. So it was around that time that I started like really just being obsessed with Jake the Snake. And kind of the first like really major angle that I remember sticking was Earthquake sitting on Damien. Earthquake killing Jake the Snake.
Oh yeah,
When
yeah,
he
yeah.
had the bag and it was like the bag was like full of hamburger meat and a little motor and he sat on him, crushed it like two Earthquake splashes, and he sat on him. And then you got Jake like looking in the bag and crying, and like little me was absolutely devastated by this, just wrecked. And that was, I think, a little bit. Now again, my timeline's off. I don't remember if that was first or Jake snicking the snake on Macho Man. I don't remember if that was first. I think Damien getting squashed was first. And I think Mega Powers was before that too, and that was a really big angle that started me off as well. But right around there, like those are the ones that I remember being the things that got me into wrestling. Like was loving Jake the Snake, and just being like to this day, I still can't look at Earthquake the same way. Every time I see him, I'm like that son of a bitch. John
What's worse,
Tenta.
Earthquake killing the snake, or
Or Earthquake
Fale, or
in a
Fale
sumo.
murdering Daryl?
Oh, no, not even a comparison. Not even a comparison. Absolutely, Earthquake killing Damien.
Oh,
Sorry, Daryl. You came back. Now all we need is Takahashi to come back, and everything will be all right.
yeah. Get well, Hiromu.
Yeah, seriously, get well, buddy. But yeah, so those are mine. Mega Powers, Jake the Snake, and having the snake get squashed, or if Macho Man getting chomped on by the King Cobra and the ropes happened before then. I don't think it did, but if it did happen before then that's the one. So yeah,
Great questions
that's
this week,
great
guys.
question, man. Yeah.
You guys really brought it this week. Thank you very much for this, and I hope you guys enjoyed this special edition. We're going to start it off as just a new separate series that you'll find in a playlist on the YouTube channel. We'll be pulling the audio out and putting those up in the audio-only podcast feed as well. So in case you didn't make the live stream or you can't watch it here on YouTube, we'll put it in your ear holes on the podcast feed as a separate, special bonus episode kind of thing. Don't want to confuse it with the patron bonus episodes, but it's something we're going to be doing every single week. Instead of putting it into the actual main shows, wanted to break it out and give it its own dedicated time so we could give you guys some more access. So thank you, everybody, for all your questions this week. If you're listening to this and you're not a patron and you'd like to get your questions in, you can head over to patreon.com/BWO. Sign up for one of those awesome reward tiers. All you need to be at is the $5 tier to be able to send in your questions, but the $10 tier is where it really kicks in. You get all of that bonus content that we've got locked away there behind Patreon. Us talking about all kinds of stuff, doing some other special stuff we've got planned for other non-WWE recaps of other pay-per-views. More and more content that we want to bring you guys But you guys are helping us do it with Patreon. So thank you very much. It also helps us avoid doing ads, which
yes,
that's
if you guys don't like it.
Inevitably that comes. Inevitably
Yeah.
that shows up at some point, but we're doing our best to try and curtail that to an extent. But there will be a time probably next year where we start doing that.
We'll
but
still
you
keep it
guys,
as minimal as possible.
yeah, as minimal as possible. But you guys doing Patreon has helped us curtail that almost completely up until this point, other than our lovely friends at Blueberry at the start of every show. But thank you guys for tuning in. As always, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at BWO Podcast, right here live for all of our content on YouTube at youtube.com/bustedwideopen. Please, please, please make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel, because that is one of our big goals for now. It was trying to get there by last night.
You're trying to rush
Fox,
it. We're trying to rush it. Yeah.
by when Fox debuted. But let's as soon as we can
We'll
get
get
to
there.
1,000 subscribers, a lot of cool stuff opens up, not only for us, but for you guys as well on YouTube. And we can't wait to get there so that we can start doing even more on YouTube. So please make sure you subscribe to our channel. That's really the only gating factor we need. We've got all the content and all the watch time and all that other stuff.
Tell
We
your
just need the
friends,
subscriptions.
tell your family,
Yes.
like, share, and subscribe.
All that good stuff. But I'm Nick Howell. You can find me on Twitter at Data Center Dude.
And I am Sir Ian Dangerous. You can find me on Twitter at Sir Ian Dangerous.
But by God!
Somebody stop the damn match!
This show is part of the Orbital Jigsaw Network.